Okay, so in science, graphing is one of the ways that we use to help show relationships between two values. Every scientific investigation is going to be measuring a value or quantity of some property. And we're going to look at how that property changes as we affect something else. So we're always testing only one variable at a time by manipulating another. So with this, we have two types of variables that we need to make sure we understand. The first one is called the independent variable. It is the variable that is manipulated. So this is the variable that you, the scientist, are going to be changing in the experiment. When we change that independent variable, it is going to have an effect on our dependent variable. Okay, our dependent variable is the variable that we are measuring. So it's the responding variable that we are recording the data from. Say we're manipulating temperature. Okay, so we're taking the speaker and this reaction and we're putting it in cold temperatures and changing it into hot temperatures. So what's going to happen is how fast that reaction occurs as we're placing these reactions in the different temperatures. So what we are physically manipulating in the lab is temperature. We are measuring the rate of the reaction. Okay, so when we do these things, we create a table usually, and we have our X and our Y values. So our responding measured variable is always going to be the outcome of the function, so the Y, where what we are manipulating in the lab, we physically as scientists are manipulating, is our X. It is our the input, what we're putting in, and the dependent is the output. So that's a good way to help remember it. So the independent is the input of the function, where the dependent is the output value that comes out of the lab. All right. So to find the relationship and to find how one thing affects the other, we use graphing. And so this is that skill that you learned in Algebra 1, where you graphed and you determine the line equation and the slope. This is where this all comes to play and where it's really important, because that line equation that you derive or that you calculate, that is what is going to tell us the relationship between the two variables. All right. So when we find a line of a graph, there are 3 steps. The first step is to make sure that you find the slope. All right. So in science, what we have to do is we go in the lab, we record our data, and we get this pretty looking table. Well, then we take that table and we are going to draw a graph. So we're going to plot it. Okay, we're going to plot it, plot the points, connect the lines, all of those things. Now, a lot of times in science, our lines aren't nice and neat. So our plots aren't always in a perfectly straight line. So we have to do what is called the line of best fit. Okay, so you need to understand that this line right here, the line of best fit, is going to be the best fit line that will get as much of our data in the line as possible. And I will show you how this looks in just a second. The next thing after we draw our line and we get our line of best fit, we are going to find our slope. If you remember, finding slope is when we take the change in y over the change in x, and we get our slope. Okay, so this is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, so we'll pick 2 plots and we will do the change in y over the change in x. Now, one of the things I want to kind of help you with here, this little triangle is called a delta. And that delta symbol always means change in. And what does that mean mathematically? That means you are going to subtract those 2 values. Okay, so just to kind of help you. The next thing that we're going to do after we find our slope is we're going to substitute the x and y variable with the calculation of m to find our y-intercept, our b. Okay, and then once we do that and substitute, and we're going to substitute it into y equals mx plus b, find our b, and then we will have our general line equation. And this equation is really important because in science it tells us the relationship between x and y. All right,